What if you opened your eyes one morning and found yourself lying not in your bed, but in the heart of ancient Sumer thousands of years ago? Imagine waking up beneath the shadow of a massive ziggurat, the sun blazing over mud brick temples, and the smell of incense and clay ovens filling the air. Before we dive deeper into this strange world together, take just a few seconds to like this video, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you are truly ready to explore. Now let us begin. The first thing you notice is the sound of bustling streets, merchants shouting, goats bleating, and scribes scratching marks into clay tablets. You try to speak, but the words in your mouth do not match the language of the people around you. They are speaking Sumerian, the oldest written language known to humankind. Suddenly, you realize this is not just a dream. Somehow, you have been thrown into the cradle of civilization. Your heart races. You know nothing of their customs, their gods, or their rules. You look around at the towering ziggurat, a pyramid-shaped temple that rises like a stairway to the heavens. Priests in long robes chant hymns to gods you have only ever read about, Anu, Enki, Inanna. The people believe these gods decide life and death, war and harvest. If you make one wrong move, you might be seen as a stranger or worse, a threat. So the question is, if this were really you, how would you survive your first day among the Sumerians? Would you blend in, learn fast, and try not to draw attention? Or would you risk exploring this world openly, knowing that every mistake could cost you dearly? Characters begin to glance at you, their eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. You take a deep breath because one thing is certain, your survival here will depend on how quickly you adapt. You decide to wander cautiously through the city streets, hoping not to attract too much attention. But there is a problem. You do not understand a single word. The people around you speak Sumerian, and their writing looks like wedges pressed into clay tablets. It is cuneiform, the earliest known system of writing. Imagine trying to read traffic signs, but every letter looks like tiny arrows stabbed into wet clay. Good luck finding the restroom. A group of scribes sits cross-legged in the corner, carving lines into tablets as if they were sending texts to the gods. You realize that, in this world, writing is not just for communication, it is power. The ones who can read and write are respected, and those who can't are left at the mercy of rulers and priests. If you can't blend in, you might be in serious danger. Suddenly, you hear shouts. A dispute is happening in the marketplace. Two men argue over a sack of grain, and the crowd grows restless. Then, a judge appears, reciting laws from memory. This is not just random justice, it is one of humanity's earliest codes of law. Centuries later, Hammurabi's code would become famous, but here you are seeing the very roots of structured justice. The judge decides fairly, but you realize something terrifying. If you break a rule, you won't just get a fine. You might be whipped, enslaved, or worse. The question is, could you survive in a society where the law is absolute and punishments are brutal? Would you try to keep your head down? Or risk learning their system to gain influence? Because here in Sumer, ignorance is not an excuse, it is a death sentence. As you back away slowly, a child points at you, giggling at your strange clothes. People begin to whisper. You feel the weight of their stares pressing on your back. One wrong word, one clumsy mistake, and you could be dragged in front of a judge yourself. Night falls over the city of Uar, and for the first time since waking up, you feel a moment of silence. But silence here does not mean safety. As the streets empty, torches flicker, and shadows stretch across the walls, you hear a chant coming from the temple. Curiosity, or maybe survival instinct, pulls you closer. Inside the ziggurat, you discover a group of priests dressed in long robes, standing beneath an open courtyard where the stars shine like diamonds. They are not just praying, they are observing. The priests of Sumer were also astronomers, tracking the skies with astonishing precision. They believe the gods speak through the stars, and every movement in the heavens carries a message. You watch as one priest points to a bright star, Sirius, and explains that its rising foretells the coming of floods. Another traces the belt of Orion, declaring it a cosmic marker of seasons. These men are scientists in their own way, centuries ahead of their time. Yet they cloak their knowledge in rituals and myths, because for the Sumerians, science and faith are inseparable. Suddenly, one of the priests turns to you. His eyes narrow as if he senses you do not belong. He asks a question you do not understand, and the others glance at you with suspicion. Your heart pounds. If they believe you mock their gods, you could be punished or worse, sacrificed. But then, an idea sparks in your mind. You point to the stars and pretend to trace their movements, mimicking what you just saw. To your relief, the priests nod approvingly. For now, you have passed their test. The question is, how far could you fake your knowledge before being exposed? Could you learn enough from the Sumerian priests to truly read the stars, or would your lack of faith betray you in the end? The next night, you are invited, or perhaps forced, to climb the ziggurat once more. This time, the priests hand you a clay tablet, its surface covered in cuneiform scratches. They point upward, expecting you to make sense of the heavens. You swallow hard. If you fail, suspicion might turn deadly. Above you, the sky unfolds like an endless map. Without modern lights to pollute it, the stars blaze with overwhelming brilliance. Constellations leap out. Orion, its belt pointing the way like an arrow. Sirius, dazzling as a beacon of floods and renewal. And the Pleiades, a cluster so bright it looks like spilled salt across the heavens. For the Sumerians, these were not just stars. They were gods, omens, and clocks all at once. You recall what little astronomy you know from school. The North Star, you look, but in this ancient era, Polaris is not yet the perfect guide. It sits slightly off-center from the celestial pole. Still, the priests seem to use the steady arc of Orion's belt to orient themselves. One traces lines across the sky with a reed, showing how east and west can be marked by rising and setting stars. Suddenly, you realize something profound. These people are not just worshipping. They are navigating. The thought strikes you like thunder. If you were cast out to sea tomorrow with nothing but the night sky, could you survive by following these same stars? Would your modern brain, dulled by GPS apps and Google Maps, be able to recall enough to find your way? One priest kneels, pressing the clay tablet into your hands. The symbols etched into it describe star paths, cycles of the moon, and predictions of eclipses. You pretend to study it, nodding slowly, but your mind spins with questions. This is more than ritual, this is science disguised as magic. The crowd around you murmurs, watching closely. Your every gesture matters now. A single hesitation could betray you, so you raise your arm and point confidently toward Orion, as if you have known the sky your whole life. The priests nod, and the tension in the air loosens. For tonight, the day arrives when the priests put their trust or suspicion to the ultimate test. They lead you down to the docks, where reed boats coated in black bitumen sway against the current of the Euphrates. The air smells of tar, salt, and fish. Before you can ask questions, they gesture for you to climb aboard. You are going to see. The boat is small, fragile by modern standards, more like a bundle of sticks tied together than a vessel. Yet to the Sumerians, this is technology at its finest. The river opens into the gulf, and soon you are drifting into the wide mouth of the ocean. The land shrinks behind you. Ahead, nothing but water, waves and sky. Night falls quickly. The stars blaze above, and now there is no temple, no walls, no priests to guide you. It is you, the sailors, and the endless sea. The men point upward, chanting names of gods and stars, using constellations as if they were road signs. Orion's belt tilts low, and one sailor taps it with a calloused finger, then gestures east. Another points to Sirius, bright and low, guiding them toward fertile shores. You try to help, but panic sets in. Your modern brain screams for GPS, a compass, even a simple flashlight. Instead, all you have is a sky full of fire. To lighten the tension, you imagine pulling out a smartphone, but of course it is useless, no signal, no charger, and the sailors would probably toss it into the sea as witchcraft. The waves grow stronger, the boat creaks. The sailors chant louder, their songs half prayer, half navigation. You grip the edge of the vessel, knuckles white, asking yourself, if this were really happening, would you trust the stars to guide you? or would you give in to fear and drift wherever the ocean takes you? Above, Orion glows, Sirius flickers, and the horizon disappears into darkness. There is no turning back. The sea has claimed you now. The ocean does not care about your fears. By the second night, the waves have grown restless, tossing the reed boat like a toy. Salt stings your lips, and every breath tastes of brine. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, and thirst becomes unbearable. The sailors, however, remain calm. They have done this before. They trust the sky more than the sea itself. One of them shows you how to fix your gaze on the stars, how to find direction without a compass. He points to the steady arc of Orion's belt, explaining in his own tongue that its angle tells them where east lies. Another gestures at Sirius, the brightest jewel in the sky, and explains its rising helps mark the seasons. And then, with a sweep of his hand, he draws attention to the moon. Even its shifting phases are a calendar, ticking off time as they drift farther from land. You realize you are witnessing something remarkable. Without telescopes, without equations, these people are navigating as skillfully as Polynesian sailors or Viking explorers centuries later. Their science is written in the sky, and their survival depends on remembering every star's place. But survival is not just about navigation. You watch them collect rainwater in jars, eat dried fish and dates, and even joke about angry sea spirits when a wave nearly knocks one sailor overboard. For a moment, laughter breaks the tension. You realize that even thousands of years ago, humor was a lifeline. Imagine trying to explain to them the concept of seasickness pills or bottled water. They would laugh at you the same way. Then the storm comes. Black clouds swallow the stars. Rain lashes the boat, and thunder cracks like the voice of Enlil himself. The sailors pray, chanting names of gods, but you know what is happening. It is a squall, a storm as old as time. Without the stars, navigation is impossible. The question is, could you survive one night at sea with nothing to guide you but blind faith and courage? You cling to the side of the boat, heart hammering, as the vessel rises and falls like a cork in the raging water. Lightning flashes, and for a moment you swear you see the outline of Orion through the storm. Hope flickers. Will you follow it, or will the sea claim you first? The storm finally breaks. Dawn spreads across the horizon, painting the waves in red and gold. Exhausted but alive, you look around at the sailors. They are smiling, laughing even, as though surviving a night like that was nothing unusual. One pats you on the shoulder, muttering a blessing in Sumerian. You do not understand the words, but you feel the meaning. You have been tested and for now accepted. But acceptance in Sumer comes with a price. That night, the priests gather again, this time with greater ceremony. Incense rises in thick cloud. Drums echo through the temple, and torches cast giant shadows on the ziggurat walls. The air feels heavy, charged with something you can't quite explain. The priests are preparing not just for worship, but for prophecy. They raise their hands to the stars, chanting names of gods. To them, Orion is not simply a constellation, it is the warrior Gilgamesh walking across the heavens. Sirius is not just a star, it is the hound of the gods, bringing floods or famine. You, with your modern mind, know these are celestial bodies, balls of gas burning light years away. Yet standing here, surrounded by chanting voices, you begin to wonder, what if they are right, in their own way? Because for the Sumerians, myth is not separate from science. Myth is science told in a language of gods and heroes. They watch the stars to predict harvests, wars and destinies, and they trust those patterns because they work. Imagine trying to tell them about gravity or nuclear fusion, they would laugh at you. The same way you might laugh at their stories of divine bulls and sky gods. The question is, where would you stand? Would you cling to your scientific logic, risking alienation, or would you embrace their mythology to survive among them? The lines blur here, and you realize something profound. Sometimes the difference between science and myth is only a matter of perspective. The priests turn to you, handing you a cup of bitter liquid, part wine, part ritual. They expect you to drink. Will you accept their vision of the cosmos, or refuse and risk everything? The stars above seem to wait for your choice. The cup is heavy in your hands. The liquid smells bitter, earthy, like crushed herbs and smoke. The priests lean closer, their eyes reflecting torchlight, waiting for your decision. Drink and you become part of their world. Refuse and you risk being cast out or worse. You lift the cup to your lips. The taste burns, a mix of wine, resin, and something you can't identify. The crowd cheers softly. For a moment, you feel accepted, as though you have stepped into their mythology, their science, their reality. The stars above will slowly, eternal witnesses to your choice. Days pass. You sail farther, learning to trust the constellations. Orion leads you east, Sirius marks the seasons, and the Pleiades whisper the turning of time. What once felt like chaos now feels like rhythm. You are no longer just a passenger, you are part of the crew, part of the Sumerian experiment of navigating the world by the heavens. And yet, a question lingers in your mind. If you had the choice, would you return to the modern world of satellites and smartphones or stay here, where myth and science dance together under an endless sky? One world offers comfort, the other offers wonder. Which would you choose as the journey comes to an end? You stand at the bow of the reed boat. The sea is calm, the stars brilliant, and for the first time, you are not afraid. You have learned something the Sumerians always knew, that survival is not just about food or shelter, it is about finding meaning in the patterns above. So now I ask you, if you woke up tomorrow in Sumer, handed only the stars as your guide, what would you do? Would you survive, or would the sea claim you? Let me know in the comments below, because I would love to hear your answer. And if you enjoyed this journey through time and imagination, do not forget to like the video and subscribe for more adventures. Until next time, may the stars guide you.